Hey there, in today's video I'm going to compare the Nike Alphafly 3 to the Nike Vaporfly 3. I'm making this video because before I bought my first Nike super shoe, I wondered which to get, the Alphafly or the Vaporfly, and in the end I ended up going with the cheapest one at the time, which was the Alphafly 1, and I've since gone on to get the Alphafly 2, the Vaporfly 3, and when the Alphafly 3 was released last week, I bought it last year. My most popular video was the Alphafly 2 versus the Vaporfly 3. So I thought we'll repeat this and have an Alphafly 3 versus the Vaporfly 3. As always, there are chapter markers down below, so you can skip on through to the bits you might be interested in. Let's get going. Nike are unusual in that they have two completely different carbon plate shoes with different design philosophies. The Alphafly 3 has foot pods in the forefoot and the Vaporfly 3 doesn't. They have the same stack and drop, a 40mm stack and an 8mm drop. I've made detailed videos of both of these shoes that I'll link at the end, and in this I'm going to try and give a brief overview of them and then which one I think is the one to go for. The foot pods at the forefoot of the Alphafly 3 take foam to surround them, and overall it's a bigger shoe. At the heel it's 130mm versus 120mm, mid-foot it's 70mm versus 53mm, and at the rear it's 100mm versus 80mm. It's also taller, it's physically bigger in every dimension. If you were to look at these two shoes and all their various dimensions, the Alphafly 3 is a much bigger shoe than the Vaporfly 3. Significantly so. All that foam adds to additional weight, but the Alphafly 3 is still the lightest Alphafly yet, and in my size, which is a UK men's 12, US 13, the Alphafly 3 weighs 266 grams, 9.38 ounces, and the Vaporfly 3 weighs 242 grams or 8.54 ounces. And it is impressive how close in weight the Alphafly 3 is to the Vaporfly 3, despite the additional size. To do a little head-to-head, in looks, I prefer the Alphafly 3. In terms of the upper, oh yeah, Alphafly 3 anytime. I don't like the upper on the Vaporfly 3. The lacing, much easier on the Alphafly 3, much easier on the 2 and the 1. The Vaporfly 3 is hard to pull through the, they've got these sort of little rectangular slots. This is much easier to pull through. We'll come to the sole, and in terms of the colorways, well, at the moment they're equal if you could get them. Nike are bringing out a new colorway in Volt, but typically the colorways between the two will all be the same. They tend to have a Kipchoge edition. I'm sure there'll be a Kiptum edition, or there'll be another edition with Ekiden or whatever. But Nike tends to apply the same colorway across their shoes, their super shoes. And once they've satisfied the initial demand, I'd imagine the colorways will be the same all the way through. In terms of sustainability, this wins it. It's lighter, there's less of it. In terms of onboarding, putting the shoe on, easily the Alphafly 3. It's really nice to put on, not difficult, doesn't take long. In terms of the running feel, this is a really nice shoe to run in. Very surprised, I've done a lot of running in it. It sounds a crazy thing to say, but it almost feels like a really nice daily trainer. In terms of the grip and traction, well, they're equally adequate, no better than adequate. Nice in the straight and in the dry. And in terms of cost, the Vaporfly 3 is a bit cheaper, about €50, $25, depends on the territory, so this is a slight cost advantage. All of that is all very well, but the only criterion that matters is performance. So can the increase in energy provided by these foot pods overcome the weight, the additional weight in the Alphafly 3? And that's really what I'm trying to find out in the next series of tests in this video. Let's see what we can learn by looking at the performance of some elite athletes in some of these shoes. And in the Alphafly 1, Eliud Kipchoge ran a sub 2-hour marathon. Not a race, but a controlled marathon, but still pretty good going. He broke the world record in 2022 in Berlin in this, the Alphafly 2, the men's world record. And then Kelvin Kiptum in Chicago 2023 broke the world record again in the Alphafly 3s to set it at 2 hours, 35 seconds in Chicago. And previously, earlier on in 2023, Kelvin Kiptum ran and won the London Marathon in 2 hours, 1 minute, 25 seconds, so 50 seconds slower, I guess, wearing a Vaporfly 2. And if you look at the finish of a lot of elite races, you see a mixture of Alphaflys and Vaporflys. You see that throughout, but at the front of the race, you definitely see some people in Alphaflys and some people in Vaporflys who are Nike athletes. And so it's not so clear cut which is the faster of the two shoes, and there are a lot of variables. Okay, time for some math to figure out what the weight difference means in shoes. And there's a couple of different academic papers. I'm not going to read them out now. I will put a link in the description. But essentially, for every 100 grams weight additionally in a shoe, the running economy is reduced by 1%. And a 1% improvement in running economy leads to a 1% faster performance. So we'll try and see how that would pan out in terms of times for marathons. Let's look at the math in terms of my shoes, my Alphafly 3, my Vaporfly 3. And the Vaporfly 3 is 24 grams lighter than the Alphafly 3. And using that math would have a 0.24% improvement in time, all things being equal. We know they're not all equal, but for the purposes of this, let's imagine they are. Taking a 4-hour marathon, which is 14,400 seconds, that would give this shoe a 96-second advantage, or about a minute and a half, all things being equal. Now, it doesn't seem like a huge amount, but I qualified for Boston this year doing the 3 hours 43:29 seconds in this shoe, and I got in by just about a minute and a half. So the weight does matter, and if it was a 2-hour marathon or 7,200 seconds, that would be 48 seconds, and that is in around the difference that Kelvin Kiptum, in which he broke his or increased his time from London to Chicago, and if he was to go sub 2, that'd be about the same amount of time again. So it's not that you can draw exact parallels, but the weight does matter. And the question is, does the energy in these foot pods give me additional energy return that'll overcome the small increase in weight? I tested the shoes in a variety of ways. This one by running 2 marathons and all sorts of training that goes with it. There's 150 kilometers on the shoe. And when I ran in Rotterdam, I broke my personal best by 10 minutes. So I have a fairly good idea that on me, this shoe is pretty decent. I went out testing the Alphafly 3. I ran on the treadmill. I did some sprints. I did some threshold runs, 2 5Ks in the park, this against this. And I did an easy day at the weekend, ran about 17 Ks in these. I put 50 kilometers on these so far. So in my performance, there's only me, so there's a very limited data set, and I haven't read any reviews of the Alphafly 3, I haven't talked to anybody about it, so I have no idea what anybody else thinks. I'm just taking my small data set and trying to draw some conclusions that might be of some use to you, and also to me. I went on the treadmill on both shoes using my Stride Duo, and I did exactly the same thing on each shoe. I did 2 minutes at 6 kilometers an hour, 2 minutes at 8 kilometers per hour, 2 minutes at 10 kilometers per hour, 4 minutes at 12 kilometers per hour, and 2 minutes at 16 kilometers per hour. And I was trying to see, with a stabilized set on the treadmill, what data I could find out that would be of use. Most of the paces I was doing was just warming up, just getting used to the running and getting into the groove on the treadmill. I'll put the results up here because it's a lot of numbers. But essentially, I ran, the most important one was that running at 12 kilometers per hour, about 7.4 miles per hour. That is just above my marathon pace. So faster than my marathon pace overall. And that's what I wanted to do. And I did that between minute 7 and minute 9.5. And I'll put the results up here. I then increased the speed to 16 kilometers per hour, 9.94 miles per hour. And I took the data set between 10.5 minutes to 11.5 minutes on the treadmill, and again, it'll go up here. The results were consistent, but somewhat inconclusive. I had a longer stride at both speeds in the Vaporfly 3. I had less ground contact time in the Alphafly 3. My vertical oscillation was higher in the Vaporfly 3. My leg strength stiffness was equal. My cadence was pretty much equal. And in power, there was more going out on the Vaporfly 3. So there was a sort of mixed results. I didn't get a clear picture out of them. Some of it is that perhaps the bounce in the treadmill, because it's more bouncy than running on road or pavement, may have offset something of the foot pods. I don't know. At the end of the day, the results, they were consistent between the two shoes at the different paces, but I couldn't really read anything into them. I then decided to try and do some sprinting. In the past, I've tested against a radar gun, which is really handy nearby. I really like that. I could do that kind of consistently. I would do that in sort of regular training. And the results were I felt reliable. You know, the faster shoes were definitely faster against the radar gun. And I got better at the technique. But anyway, I did a few round the corner. I did 3 runs in the Alphafly 3 to warm up. Literally start, go as fast as I can to try and get max power. Then I did 3 runs in the Vaporfly 3, and so I was warmed up, and then another 3 in the Alphafly 3. And again, it was inconclusive. I felt I was getting faster in the Vaporfly 3, but the data didn't support that. The fastest was the Alphafly 3, but to be honest, most of it was down to technique rather than the shoes. After the sprints and the treadmill and the easy run of 16, 17K and various other training runs that I did in the Alphafly, I pretty much used it for the entire week. I was no wiser as to which of these. I was still so much inconclusive stuff. So I decided to do 2 threshold pace 5Ks in the park. So I ran down to the park, about a kilometer, just over a kilometer, ran 5K, came back, changed shoes, same thing again yesterday evening. And I was running at a comfortable pace. So I'd say about 8 out of 10, not fully going, but what I wanted to try and settle into a pace that I enjoyed in the shoe. I went out first in the Alphafly 3 and then I came back, changed, went out in the Vaporfly 3. Now, you're always going to be a bit more tired on the second run, but I thought it was doable and the results were interesting. I went faster in the Alphafly 3 at 23 minutes and 5 seconds. And I think my personal best of the 5K is just less than 22 minutes. So I was going, reasonably well. And in the Vaporfly 3, I went out at 23 minutes and 53 seconds. And again, I was trying to settle into some comfortable times. And in the Alphafly 3, I had 186 steps per minute, so the cadence was good, but I had a longer stride. And that is my obsession, a longer stride, because I have short legs and longer stride will make me run quicker. So 1.16 meters and 8.2 centimeters of vertical oscillation. And then the Vaporfly 3, it was 185 steps per minute, pretty similar, and 1.12 per meter. And in terms of the stride length, and 8.1 centimeters vertical oscillation. So the figures were something more I could pin down having done the threshold 5Ks. There's very fine margins between these two shoes. I was faster in the Alphafly 3. I did go out first in the Alphafly 3. And I wasn't going all out at either stage. So these are sort of nuanced impressions. But taking the third kilometer, I ran at 4 minutes 42 per kilometer in the third kilometer in the Alphafly 3, and I ran at 4:45 in the Vaporfly 3. And the third kilometer is usually when I'm settling in, and it's probably the most accurate. So yeah, that was the data set I got out of a week's running in the Alphafly 3. Nike have announced the new colorways. They announced the new colorways a long time out. It's a sort of volt, a yellow limey green blue combo. It's coming out on the 15th of February at 12 a.m. GMT in Japan. This is what I could find out from the web. That was on the web as a member-only product at 39,655 yen. If you're interested. Thanks to Ptolemy for pointing that out. I found then on the app that's available here in Ireland, it's coming out 7th of March at 8 o'clock GMT, so almost a month later. I presume that's Ireland, UK, Europe. Then it's coming out, it's announced in the Nike USA site at 4th of April, which seems a long time afterwards, at 3 o'clock GMT +1. So for the moment, it's a shoe that is hard to get directly from Nike. So which shoe should you buy? Well, if you are an alpha male or an alpha female, you're still going to be an alpha person. The Alphafly, if you really like the Alphafly 1, then I don't see any reason to go for the Vaporfly. And particularly if you land on your forefoot, you'll probably be able to get the real advantage out of the pods, and for the slight additional weight in what is a really nice shoe to run in, yeah, I would go for the Alphafly 3. And if you really wanted a lower stack to 4mm, maybe still go with the Alphafly 1. But yeah, this is a significant improvement, and if you're an Alphafly person, I think you'll be really happy with this shoe. If you're new to the Nike Super Shoes and wondering which one to buy, and you're a forefoot striker, I'd go for the Alphafly 3. If you are a heel striker, I'd go for the Vaporfly 3, and there's a sliding scale somewhere in between. They're both fantastic shoes with very narrow margins between them. If you're a Vaporfly person, I imagine you'd still stay with the Vaporfly, but it's much closer this time than it was in the early versions of the Alphafly. To go back to the elites, Kiptum ran faster in Chicago in Alphafly 3s than he did in London in Vaporfly 2s. Kipchoge ran slower in Berlin 2023 in Alphafly 3s compared to the Alphafly 2s. He broke the world record the year previously. Now, it's more than just the shoes. There's a whole load of other things going on, but I suspect in those premium races, Nike may be saying to Kiptum and Kipchoge which shoes to, maybe Kipchoge has more choice. But in terms of premium races like Chicago, they might be saying to Kiptum, look, this is our latest super shoe. He's fast in anything. But what I think will be really interesting is what happens in the Olympics. If both Kiptum and Kipchoge go for Kenya, then they probably will have their choice of which shoe they want to use and which shoe they think is faster. And I often wonder how they go about making their choices. I know how I do, and you know how I do, but I wonder how they do. But that will be really, I'm really interested in that. I'm really interested in looking at Rotterdam. It's coming up in a couple of months where Kiptum is going for the world record. I'm really excited about that. For me, I know I did my personal best in the Vaporfly 3. I'm running Boston, but I'm going to be running Boston in the Alphafly 3. I'm going to try and see, well, I mean, I need a marathon worth of data to try and figure out, will I get any return on the downward slope? Will I go faster in the stride? I'm trying to go slow, by the way. That's what I tell myself. But on the downhills at the start, will I be getting more push out of this? And then at the end, will I be able to get a little bit more energy out of that? I don't know. That's what I'm going to find out. But yeah, these are two really great shoes with really fine margins between them. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, it'd be great if you'd hit the like button. As always, there'll be lots of stuff in the description below, and I'll happily answer any questions you put into the comments. There'll be a big blue subscribe button popping up there, and some great videos there. Thanks for watching. Until the next video, just keep running along.